qualified to read Bhagavad Gita. Everyone is here, so that automatically makes us qualified to read Bhagavad Gita. And if we are qualified or not, like do we have that taste? So yesterday we had wonderful prasadam. But what if someone has no hunger? Like there are chappan bhog in front of you, but if you have no hunger, will you be able to devour it? Will you be able to eat it or relish it? No, right? So the hunger, that is of more importance, and that will qualify us to read Bhagavad Gita. So again, I beg your forgiveness to talk about the topic of sorrow. That is actually the topic of today's class: suffering, types of suffering, and reason for suffering. So any suffering that we have in our life is suffering has been like this is both for devotees and non-devotees. So what makes this different? Like what makes a devotee suffer and what makes a non-devotee suffer? So that what we are going to talk about, and that's what Bhagavad Gita tells about everything. So non-devotees, they don't know that they are suffering, and that is their suffering. Example could be like snowfall. We have extreme winter right now, but not everyone takes as a suffering. They just accept it and move on. So for them, the suffering, they don't accept it. That's the suffering. So if they don't accept it, they are not going to do anything about it. But if we as a devotee try to think that it is a suffering, then we will go deep inside, like, why am I suffering? Why am I here? So it's very important to know that we are suffering. We are suffering, even though we feel that everything is. Sometimes, like, we get so used to suffering. I think the best example is of Lord Indra. Lord Indra was cursed by Brahma, so he took a body of a pig. Lord Indra, the king of heaven, took a body of a pig. So when Lord Brahma saw that the Indra's post is missing and they need a mismanagement is going on. So Brahma ordered Narad Muni, go and please call Indra, who is suffering in the body of a pig. So when Narad Muni came down, and Indra was in the body of a pig, had millions of wives and children, and they also made Indra, the pig Indra, the leader of their community. So when Narad Muni came and said, like, oh, you're Indra, come back to us. It's like, what? No, I'm happy here. Even in the body of a pig, Indra was happy. He did not know that in his past life he was Indra. He said, like, no, if I come now, what will happen to my children? What will happen to my wives? And I'm the leader of this. I don't want to come back. So this example really shows that even though in the body of a pig, Indra was enjoying. I mean, Indra didn't feel the need of going back to heaven. Imagine the position of Indra in heaven. Like, he has all the pleasures, like drinking somaras and everything, and beautiful dancers dancing in front of them, and in a pig body. I mean, eating stool, and he's still being Indra. He was enjoying. So that's the position of a living entity in material world. We accept that this is what it is. We accept that, oh, there is no sorrow. We accept that, yeah, it's winter, it's going to snow. We don't realize that this is suffering. So that's what the difference is between a devotee and a non-devotee. The second example I heard is that how there's a spider web everywhere. If there's a spider web while cleaning falls on our body, it's okay, we just dust it off. But if the same spider web falls on our eye, it gives so much a problem. Similarly, any problem which falls on a devotee, like it's like falling on an eye, it causes a lot of problem. But the same spider web falling on any other part of the body, like falling on a non-devotee, they'll just dust it off and they will move forward. So it's very important to know that we are suffering, and then once we know, we'll do something about it. There's one point that our acharyas clearly establishes, Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, in the different tikas, in the different commentaries, that any happiness that comes in this world comes along with the suffering. That any happiness that we suffer, any happiness that we enjoy, comes because someone else has suffered. Any example you take, like driving a car, driving a car. Person who made the car didn't like the job, and the car is throwing the gaseous element inside, which is disturbing the ozone layer. So any happiness or any, I would say, comfortability, any comfort that we are having is because of someone else's suffering. So this point we should always keep in our mind, that I'm happy, but someone else is suffering because of my happiness. Once we are conscious about it, we will know how our consciousness should be while either enjoying or suffering. Same, the food that we eat, it's by how did we get the food? We had to cut the plants, we had to take the fruits and the babies of the plant, we took it away. So anything that we have is just because that someone else has suffered because of us. Also, we see that happiness in this world we see that it's like a mirage in a desert. Once if we see a mirage in a desert, so we think there's water, but it's not a water, it's just reflection. Similarly, any happiness in this world or any sorrow is just a reflection. The example would be a camel. A camel who eats the thorny bushes of a tree while chewing, the blood comes out from the camel. So is camel really enjoying while eating? No, right? The blood is coming out. So, but he is tasting its own blood while eating. So that suffering is any happiness is mixed with suffering in this world because all the three modes are interlinked. You cannot have your goodness, passion, and ignorance. You cannot have only goodness. You cannot have only passion. You cannot have only ignorance. They're always interlinked. The only state is all is pure goodness, which is about three modes of material nature, which only happens when we are practicing Krishna consciousness purely. Uh, so thing is that as devotees we should understand that we are always in any enjoyment we do we are suffering. So that point once we are realized that we are suffering, we have to make other people realize that oh you are suffering, that any suffering is don't take it for granted, and that's why we go out for book distribution. Devotees para dukha dukhi, it's like any other suffering, it's devotee suffering. That's why it's very important to go and spread out this message that, oh, you are really suffering. This is not the world to enjoy. Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, "Dukharama Shashvatam." This is a place of miseries, and how can someone find happiness? That's why it is very important to know our Shastras, it's very important to know our Tattva. I think I mentioned this point before as well, that if we have a strong foundation of Krishna consciousness, if our principles, if our Tattva is clear about philosophy, so that makes the root. If our roots are strong of Krishna consciousness, any wind will not blow us away. If our roots are not strong in Krishna consciousness because we don't know the Tattva, we don't know the philosophy, then any other wind in a form of sorrow, in form of any other good temple, any in form of any other temple or any other sampradaya offering good prasadam will be carried away by the breeze. But if our Shastra, if our philosophy is very strong, no amount of distress, no amount of opulent food or anything outside will shake us. So it's very important that we have our roots very roots strongly rooted, that any amount of it in a form of distress, be a big distress of passing away of a beloved or any other will not shake us. So today's class, I will try my best to present the tattva because I feel that philosophy should always be strong enough, the foundation. I know people like more of the Leela Katha, like the stories of, but I'll try my best to include some. But today's class is more about the philosophy. So suffering is inevitable. But what difference we can do when we're suffering? So either we suffer in knowledge or either we suffer without knowledge, like in ignorance or without ignorance. So it's like when Srila Prabhupada started the BPG back to God advancing in early days of ISKCON, he says that like ignorance is darkness and and then godness is light. So it's very important to know that any suffering that we suffer in knowledge. We don't suffer in ignorance. Or else, and what is the difference between ourselves and insects? They don't know that they are suffering, but we know we are suffering. But we should suffer in knowledge, not in ignorance. What is the result of it? Once we know that we are suffering once we are suffering, and once we know that if we are suffering in knowledge, we will be able to stop that suffering. But once we don't know that we are suffering, how are we supposed to stop that knowledge? How are we supposed to stop that suffering? The greatest insult to humanity, the greatest insult to our human body is like when we die in ignorance. That is the greatest insult. So then Krishna will say that you did not do the best of the human body. You suffered all in ignorance. Then why do I need to give you a human body next life? I better give you a birth of an insect who suffers the same way as you suffer in non-human life, in ignorance. So the greatest benefit that we can do to ourselves and to other people around is to know that we are suffering, but we are suffering in knowledge, not in ignorance. So then, if we trace back, and once we know we are suffering, now the intelligent person will ask, why am I suffering? Why? What is the reason of my suffering? What did I do? So once we know, we will try to understand the cause of our suffering. So the main cause of our suffering is that again comes to that we are suffering without knowledge. That's the main cause of our suffering. There is one nice shloka which is in Nyaya Sutra, part 1 and verse number 2. It's like it explains the main source of our suffering. So it says that once we know we are suffering, so we know that's an enemy. So to defeat an enemy, we should know an enemy first. So the verse is again it's very self-explanatory. If we know the basic Hindi or Sanskrit will be able to make sense out of it. The shloka is Dukha, Janam, Pravritti, Dosha, Mithya Gyan. Dukha, sorrow, Janam, birth, Pravritti, nature, Dosh is fault, and Mithya Gyan is ignorance. So, if we break down this, Dukha, the cause of Dukha, you understand Dukha, right? Suffering. The cause of suffering is Janma, birth. So, the cause of suffering is our own birth. If I did not take birth, I would not have to suffer. But then, what is the cause of the Janma? What is the cause of our birth? So Dukha Janam Pravritti, the cause of our Janam, the cause of our Pravritti is nature. The cause of our birth is nature. Then what is the source of nature? Pravritti. Dukha Janam Pravritti Dosha. So the cause of Pravritti is dosha. Dosha is fault finding. Then what is the cause of the fault finding? Fault finding is mithya jnana. Dukha Janam Pravritti Dosha mithya jnana. Cause of dosh, fault finding is mithya jnana. Mithya jnana is ignorance. So again it links back to ignorance. The cause of dukkha is janam. The cause of suffering is birth. The cause of birth is nature. The cause of nature is dosh, fault finding, and the cause of fault finding is mithya jnana. So again, if you link it together, the cause of dukkha is mithya jnana. The cause of sorrow is ignorance. Just because we are in ignorance, we are suffering. And avidya. Avidya is again a form of ignorance. That is the thinking that this body to be a permanent. It's also the cause. Again, ignorance. Ignorance is not knowing the truth, not knowing what is light, remaining in darkness and keeping other people in darkness too because we think that it is right. That is the worst thing, as I mentioned. That makes you imagine the happiness of a dog. The happiness of a dog is eating the rotten food. It's like, they would eat food which has fungus on it. That's the happiness of a dog. So is it in ignorance or is it in knowledge or without knowledge? Without knowledge. How can someone eat the food with the fungus on it? Dog can eat, we cannot eat because dog is in ignorance, we are not in ignorance. That makes the difference between a living entity, human and animals. So if we again go back to this shloka, it says like from ignorance, again going backward, from ignorance comes fault finding. Dukkha, janam, pravritti, dosha, mithya jnana. From mithya jnana comes dosha. So from ignorance comes fault finding. We take someone as a friend, we take someone as an enemy. Why? Because we're not in knowledge, right? So that fault finding came inside the heart because of ignorance. If we had that proper knowledge that everyone is part and parcel of Krishna, we would not take someone as our enemy or someone as our friend. Again, the root cause is ignorance. So, and just because I want to enjoy this world and someone is causing a hindrance to it, he's my enemy. And I want to enjoy the world and that person is helping me to enjoy the world, it's my friend. But again, we are not the enjoyers. Again, it comes back to mithya, ignorance. I hope everyone is following me. I'm trying my best to simplify the understanding as I could. Again, from fault finding, again going back to the shloka, dukkha, janam, pravritti, dosha, mithya. From ignorance comes dosha, from fault finding. He's mine, he's not mine. From dosha, because we are not fault finding, comes nature, which nature is to get attached to someone and to get attached to someone, right? So, comes nature, attachment and hatred. As I told you, like I'm attached to my friends and I hate my enemies. Because of that nature, comes birth. Like we take birth because we that links to all the karma that we have from all the birth. And because we have birth, we have dukh, we have sorrows. So this shloka is interlinked. Because of dukh, we have janam, parvati, dosh, and mithya jnana. So it's very important to know that the cause of our suffering is because we are in ignorance. So I have only one line from Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which explains 5 kinds of dukkha. Now that we know that we are suffering, now that we know that what is the cause of our suffering, we should. I thought of explaining 5 types of sorrows, which is there in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. It says avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, and panchaklesha. 5. I think the words are self-explanatory again. If we break down again, it's ignorance. Which ignorance is like what? We take something which is bad, we take it as a good. Something which is good, we take it as bad. Which again causes hatred and attachment and again fault finding. Asmita, the reason that we exist here, janma, because we have taken birth, we are unhappy. Raga, attachment. How can attachment gives oneself sorrow? It says that once we are attached to someone, we are attached to someone because that person is giving happiness to us, right? But the same attachment can also give us sorrow when we fight with that person, or either that person is away from us, or is no more in this world. So even the attachment gives us sorrow. That's what type of sorrow is like, attachment. Raga, dvesha. Dvesh is that again, Dvesh is like enemy. We don't like this person. We literally hate that person. That is also a type of sorrow. That being attached to someone or not attached to someone is again a type of sorrow. That explains. And Abhinivesh. Abhinivesh is death. Everyone has a fear of death. If you don't have any of this, but you always have Abhinivesh, like fear that one day this body is going to perish and we have to leave behind all those things that we have here. Uh, Insects, like as I talked about insects and any other animals. Even if they don't have asmita, raga, dvesha, ignorance, even if don't have any hatred or attachment or any ignorance, they will always have one fear of dying. Have you ever had an experience of killing a mosquito by hand or something like that? They will fly away quickly. Why? Because they know they are going to die. But why do they know they are going to die? Only because they have suffered previously the pain of death. That's why they know that if I'm going to die, it's going to be so painful. Like that, like the mosquito flying away from our hand, explains us that the mosquito is fear of death. But how did the mosquito have this fear of death? Only because the mosquito have suffered this fear before. Then only they would have it, right? I mean, if you are sick and doctor gives you that, tells you like you have two options: either I'll cut your hand or either I'll kill you. What will you choose? Obviously, like cutting my hand, I want to live. Just take my hand off if that's going to cure me. So that is always there. It's kind of, if there is a birth, there is a death. So that is also a type of sorrow that Shri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Four kind of janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi, birth, death, old age, and disease. They are always there. But again, the cause of this is ignorance. As we know that because of our karma, we have three kinds of karma. Prarabdha, Kutach, and once in the seed form, once that we are suffering, and once we are destined to suffer. Those karma we got because of our previous lives, right? We all know that someone taking birth in a pious family and someone taking birth in a family of poor people. Why? The reason explained is karma, because of the karma. So that's why Krishna says that Tasma Yogi Bhava Arjuna, become a yogi. That's if the reason for explaining all this is that we got to be stable in happiness and distress, and that will qualify us to practice Krishna consciousness nicely. We will not dwindle away when there is sorrow. We will not, become too happy. Like I said, becoming too happy when you're happy and becoming too sad when you're sad. If you are stable, then that will qualify you. That will qualify you to progress. But if you're always being dwindled, like if you're always being, shaken up by the moods of material nature, by the sorrows and by the happiness, that will definitely affect our Krishna consciousness. Like, today I'm very happy, I'm going to chant 16 rounds. No, today I'm very sad because I feel yesterday my best friend died or anything. I don't have a proper mood. I'll only chant 4 rounds. So, but once we are stable mentally, once we are, stable materially, like not materially in terms of money, but once we know that situated properly, from there we can progress in bhakti. So it's like, that's why Krishna says like in 646, that Tasma Yogi Bhava Arjuna. There's a yogi is superior to a tapasvi, superior to jnani is a person of learning, and even superior to is a karmi. Therefore Arjuna strive to be a yogi. And also, as we know that as Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 chapters. First to 6 chapters explains about Karma Yoga, 6 to 12 chapters about Bhakti Yoga, and 13 and 18 talks about Jnana Yoga. So 6 to 12 chapters of Bhagavad Gita is the heart of Bhagavad Gita. Anything precious in any book is in the middle, because else people like to skim through the book and not study. So the essence of the Vedas is Mahabharata, and Bhagavad Gita is the heart of Mahabharata. Therefore it says that Vyasadeva told everything in Mahabharata. But we don't know that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about different sorrows. Krishna also tells about how to mitigate those sorrows and how to come to him. That's what Bhagavad Gita talks about. If we talk about, one more, why, keeping ourselves stable makes us to progress in Krishna consciousness. It says that in 18th chapter, verse 54, it says, Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma, na shochati na kamsati, sama sarvesu bhutesu mad bhaktim lavate param. Is that one who is thus transcendentally situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed towards every living entity. In this state, he attains the pure devotion service unto me. See, he never laments. He has no hatred, he has no attachment, he has no enemies, he has no friends. But that's why, and he is equally disposed to every living entity. Therefore, a devotee is always prasanatma. Like, that is the whole point of practicing Krishna consciousness. That is the whole point of practicing Bhakti Yoga. because we want to be happy. Like if we want suffering, we should just go out of Krishna consciousness and we see that there's endless suffering in the world. But since we are trying to be devotees, the whole point is that to be happy always. So why to be happy always? Because you're trying to connect to the source of happiness, Shri Krishna. If you are not happy while practicing Krishna consciousness, then there's something you're doing is wrong. Something we are not doing Krishna consciousness, we are not following the principles properly, we don't have the proper philosophy in our mind, our base is not clear, our tattva, we don't know proper philosophy. If we are not happy being in Krishna consciousness, that means that something is missing, something is not right. It's better that we, if you want to be sad, we better go outside. There's so much of sadness everywhere. But this Krishna consciousness is there to the whole point of Krishna consciousness is to please Krishna, right? Is to please Radha Krishna. How can you please someone if you yourself are unpleased, right? Like how can you give pleasure to someone if you yourself is like too sad or too morose all the time? Like why? Because you're finding faults in others. Oh, you did not do this properly. I'm very mad. This has to be in this way. Then how can you give pleasure to Radha Krishna? That's the whole purpose of our existence. That's the whole purpose of bhakti. That's the essence of Krishna consciousness, to give pleasure to Krishna. Also to again solidify the point that we're talking about is in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 20 to 23. The purport is that in the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in the boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So, Srila Prabhupada explains very nicely that in one lecture, I was just listening this morning, he says that there are three types of suffering, apart from what we discussed, five. Adidevic, Adibhautic, and Adhyatmic. I think we all know about that. Adhyatmic is the suffering. It comes when our body and mind is harassing us, when our mind is too disturbed, or when we are sick, or when we are depressed, when we are angry. It's also a type of suffering. It is called as Adhyatmic. The second is Adidevic, like heavy snowfall by the nature. We take it as lightly. Oh, I have a headache, I have to take Tylenol. But we are suffering. We should do something about it. Heavy snowfall, I'll clean it and then I'll move. And then I'll go forward. Adibhautic. It's like by other living entities giving us pain. Maybe they're fighting with us, maybe they're angry with us. So that Srila Prabhupada says that one should be conscious of the suffering, therefore is qualified for the spiritual life. Like Arjuna, who is suffering, therefore he approached Krishna. I mean, I heard in a lecture where Arjuna, when they had a period of going to Banvas for 15 years, he fought the entire Kaurava Sena single-handedly. So then what happened to Arjuna when he was supposed to fight again the battle of Kurukshetra? Was he in delusion himself? Like, no, he was not. He was a great warrior. He had confidence that he can defeat Kauravas one more time, single-handedly. But he was put in delusion by Krishna so that he approaches Krishna and for our good, the Bhagavad Gita should be spoken. So, if we are in suffering, then we will approach someone and I want to end my suffering. What should I do? Therefore, we start reading Bhagavad Gita because Bhagavad Gita has all the answers. What are the suffering, types of suffering, why we are suffering, and what to do when we are suffering. So it explains that we should tell our mind that any enjoyment we do is mixed with suffering. So we should not look forward enjoyment, and we should not look forward not suffering. Also, it says that in any form of material existence, one is inavailable, ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in material world is due to the multiple reactions from sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. That is what Srila Prabhupada says in chapter 4, shloka number 31st. The human form of life is the only loophole by which we may get out of this entanglement. Srila Prabhupada says it's very important that ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of because we are in the material existence. So everything again comes back to ignorance. Just because we are ignorant, we are suffering. So as a devotee, we should try to stop our suffering by not remaining in ignorance, by seeing everything in the light of Krishna. That like why are we suffering, and when we are when we know when we are in knowledge, then we'll realize that we should do something about it, and then we'll stop right then and then we will stop the karma cycle, or else it will go on, and that will cause us more bodies in our next life. And it also says that Bhakti Yoga, as I told you, is the only source of happiness that is available to us, like being a Bhakti Yogi. So Krishna says like Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yogi, but Bhakti Yoga is the topmost because he or she will realize the importance of coming to Krishna consciousness, and how that is the only way in this Kali Yuga to mitigate all our sufferings. It's not. Then again, if we talk about that, it's not that we do bhakti yoga because we don't want to suffer. We do. We try to. We try chanting around. We try to please Krishna, not because that we don't want to suffer. It's just because we want Krishna to be happy with our activities, right? Once he's happy, and then it's up to him whether he wants to give us more birth or no birth. Then we can always whatever he does, we'll accept it. So I feel that like whenever we have something, something good, something, if we have something good, we try to give it to others, because we want other people suffering to stop as well. That's why I told them, devotees para dukha dukhi. That's why we go out on book distribution to tell them that, oh, listen, you are suffering. You don't know, but you are suffering. And this is the way that you can stop that suffering. Because people take it for granted. Okay, I'm sick tomorrow. I'll take Tylenol and I'll go to work. But they don't know. It's kind of repetitive. It's going to come back again. That's why it's very important to go out and book distribution, give them the holy name, give them Bhagavad Gita, so that they realize that they are suffering and they can put an end to our suffering. And as we all know, this month is a very, very special month, because Bhagavad Gita was spoken in this month by Shri Krishna to Arjuna. So we should always, and we as a community ISKCON, we always have high goals of book distribution. Who's going to distribute more and more books? We all might know His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj. He was always after the books, that how many books we sold. Sometimes like we think that, oh, what is going to happen, that if I distribute books, what if the person does not read? So someone asked this question to Srila Prabhupada, that you always emphasize that, oh, we should distribute books, so we should distribute books. But what if someone takes a book and don't read it? Srila Prabhupada said, that's not your problem. The books are item, like they're bomb. They will take time, and they will blast when the right time comes. I have seen many stories of book distribution, which really inspires me. That how these books are really magical. That they create magic when they are in the shelf. Even the person is just kept inside the shelf and not reading it, but something happens in the family. There's a death in the family, and they will just open up the time. There's so much sorrow. I want to, they need help. They need spirituality when they're very sad. So that's the time when they open Bhagavad Gita and they start reading about it. So I think we have this responsibility on our shoulders to try to distribute books as much as we can, to please Srila Prabhupada, and to please our acharyas, to please our whole sampradaya. Because if they are pleased, Krishna is pleased with us. We cannot try to please Krishna directly. We have to please Krishna in a parampara. We have to please our Guru. If our Guru is pleased, and all our gurus in our parampara will be happy. So it's I think everyone knows about the special month, but I would like to request each one of you to distribute at least one Bhagavad Gita. I'm not saying one box of Bhagavad Gita, but one Bhagavad Gita. You can give it to your colleague, you can give it to your neighbor, and if you cannot do that, you can always sponsor Bhagavad Gita. Just pay for Bhagavad Gita, and we will, like other devotees, will try to distribute. Yesterday we went out for book distribution at Panchvati supermarket at Markham and elsewhere, and I did not think of anything. I thought like maybe we had only an hour to distribute. So I thought that maybe nothing will happen. I was open to any failures or any abuses that comes along the book distribution, because I remember trying to distribute books downtown Toronto many years ago, and the lady passed by and she just threw money on my face. It's like, oh, you don't have money for your school? I'm just giving you the money. Just go take the money and go back to school. Any pain we take is for the book distribution will always please Srila Prabhupada so much. I have suffered so many abuses going on. Especially, I remember going out on book distribution on a gay pride many years ago, and we have great gay pride happening in downtown Toronto every year during June, July. June, July is a month for the gay. They had a gay pride happening, and I even remember going on into book distribution for the African culture happening. So loud music, the smell of the food that's coming in, it's so much of inconvenience for a devotee to go out and distribute books and loud music and the strong smell of nicotine, and but any small amount of pain that we take for the pleasure of Krishna is definitely going to please Krishna so much. So, and yesterday as I was talking when we went on a book distribution, it was we did almost like more than 20 books in 1 hour, and people give so much of donation. I think we just have to step out. Vaishnav Prabhu says that the most important is to show up. Just show up, and the books will do the magic. Do not do anything it's not my purity. It's not on my side that the books are going up. It's books itself. The book has so much of purity. Its book has so much of power that the books are going on its own. The books are flying once you have, and even if it does not go away, even if you don't distribute a single book in the whole day, but Krishna sees their effort. We should not get morals by not getting results, but showing up, like touching the pavement. That's what Vishnu Prabhu says, like touching the pavement, like touching the payment. Just be there on the spot, try to distribute books. That's all you have to do. Just touch the payment, just show up. That's all you have to do. Do not do anything else. And I just joined this morning. Mr. Kabir was talking about book distribution this morning, and he was talking about that how devotees from last 40 years are trying to distribute books like non-stop, either rain or shine, doesn't matter. From last 40, 50 years, Srila Prabhupada disciples, they are so old, 65 years, 70 years old, but they are like relentlessly are trying to distribute books, not taking into consideration their own pleasure, their own comfort. Imagine an old person going on a book distribution and standing in a cold minus 20, minus 25, and staying there for long, long hours. But we are young blood, we can do it. I mean, they are double, triple of our age, and they are doing it, and why cannot we? Just touching the payment will solve everything. That's what Shri Babu says. Just go there, and magic will happen. So I would like to request each one of you to please send and distribute books as much as you can in this month of December, and of course throughout the year. But if you're not that kind of, if you don't want to do that, you can try to approach your family members, gift them, or your neighbors, or your office worker, or anyone. And if you don't want to do that either, just sponsor a Bhagavad Gita. So that will help us to distribute books at a lesser price, because not everyone gives a good donation when they go out there. So that will help us to maintain our funds too. So here I think I would like to stop, and any comments, corrections, and pledges too. I would like to take any pledges if someone wants to at least one Bhagavad Gita this month, or one box of Bhagavad Gita should be great too. But I think it's fine. It's like a story of a squirrel and a Hanuman, that Lord Ram is not pleased by, like, it's not that he's not pleased by squirrel and he's pleased by Hanuman, because Hanuman is taking more and more rocks, but he's also so pleased with the squirrel too. It's only taking a tiny bit of a drop of a rock to put on the ocean, right? So we cannot get squirrel in Lord Ram's army. Everyone trying to do a bit, like every bit counts, like each and every bit counts. So any small effort, like not distributing a one full of box of Bhagavad Gita is okay, but this distributing a one small, like one Bhagavad Gita is also very will also give pleasure to Shri Krishna and Radharani. So I would request again to please help in spreading this movement of Lord Chaitanya, because that's what the only solution to remove the ignorance in this Kali Yuga is the only solution is like our Bhagavad Gita. And as I mentioned, that the topic was again this one, like why should we read Bhagavad Gita? And once we know why should we read, we should read and try to distribute. So yeah, the floor is open for any questions and corrections. Or maybe if you want to just say that, yes please.
So it seems like in order to get purified, there must be suffering, because if you are always in happiness, you won't be able to practice bhakti in a sense. It's hard to.
Yeah, that's what it says, right? Like for a devotee, suffering and sorrow is same. I mean, for a devotee, he's always balanced. A devotee is not very happy in happiness and not very sorrow, not very sad in sadness. Like for a devotee, is always stable, because if a devotee is very happy and is very sad, then he or she will not be able to focus on in Krishna consciousness. Like, oh, I'm very happy today. It's not that suffering is inevitable. Yes, suffering will make you close to Krishna. But at the same time, suffering is inevitable. It is going to come because of a past karma, like whatever we have karma. And because how this material nature is kind of designed, dukkha shashvatam, right? But yes, but for practicing devotee, suffering will definitely bring closer to Krishna. But we should strive to become balanced in suffering and in distress and happiness. So, that's the kind of a starting point from which you can grow in Krishna consciousness. Suffering will definitely bring closer to Krishna consciousness, but that means that once the suffering is gone, you are away from Krishna. Like once the suffering is gone, you're happy. Then that feeling of surrender will not come once you're happy. The feeling of surrender will only come when you're suffering. But those cannot be the causes for you to progress in Krishna consciousness. Like once you are stable, then only the different stages, then only you will progress to different parts of Krishna consciousness. There's so many building blocks to attain the pure form of love. So then it will be only towards anartha-nivrati, like how the anartha-nivrati is like how removing different anarthas from our heart. But if it is suffering is gone, then the impetus, the impetus of our daily Krishna consciousness will also be gone, right? It's very important to be stable. Like it says that either it is but in Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that this is kind of how it's like it's winter now and then it will be summer and spring. So it's kind of a changing season. The suffering and the happiness is again a kind of changing season. So we don't get to do we stop going to work when it's snowing, or we only go to work when it is summer? No, we still go to work because we have to. Similarly, it's not that we only practice Krishna consciousness when we are sad, and we'll stop practicing Krishna consciousness when we're happy. So it's kind of we got to be stable. Then only we'll progress. We will advance, but the important part of progressing in Krishna consciousness will only come when we are stable. I think it has to say, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Sorry? Sorry, I can't hear.